You were
Sophia Bennett
cheating on
stood at
me.
the edge of the grand ballroom, feeling the weight of 1,000 memories pressing against her chest like stones in deep water. The Crystal Plaza Hotel in downtown Chicago sparkled with excessive wealth and carefully constructed images of success that made her former life seem like a distant dream wrapped in fog. She had received the invitation 3 weeks ago, addressed to Miss Sophia Bennett, not Mrs. Mark Donovan anymore, and that small detail had felt like the first breath after drowning. The divorce had been finalized 8 months prior, but the wounds still felt fresh, like paper cuts that refused to heal properly. Mark had left her for someone younger, more polished, more everything that Sophia supposedly was not, according to his cruel words during their final argument. Tonight, however, was not about dwelling on past humiliations or nursing old wounds that kept her awake during lonely nights in her small apartment. Sophia had come here with a purpose burning in her heart like a flame that refused to be extinguished by doubt or fear. Her grandmother had passed away 6 months ago, leaving behind more than just memories and old photograph albums filled with sepia-toned faces. The reading of the will had changed everything, transforming Sophia from a discarded housewife into something she never imagined possible. Eleanor Montgomery Bennett had been more than just a kind old woman who baked cookies and told stories about the old days. She had been a silent titan of Chicago real estate, holding properties and investments worth billions, carefully hidden behind trusts and legal structures. Sophia had inherited everything, becoming one of the wealthiest women in Illinois overnight, though she had kept this information closely guarded like a precious secret. The transformation had been gradual and intentional as she learned about her new responsibilities and the power that came with such enormous wealth. She had spent months working with financial advisors, lawyers, and philanthropic consultants, building a foundation that would honor her grandmother's legacy. Now she stood in a midnight blue gown that hugged her curves perfectly, custom designed by an up-and-coming designer she had quietly begun sponsoring. Her hair, once kept in a simple ponytail, now fell in elegant waves around her shoulders, framing a face that had always been beautiful, but was now highlighted with subtle, professional makeup. Sophia scanned the crowd, searching for the man who had once promised her forever, but had delivered only heartbreak and public humiliation instead. Mark Donovan entered the ballroom like a peacock, displaying feathers to anyone who would watch and admire his manufactured success. His arm was draped possessively around Olivia Reed, a woman who seemed to exist solely in shades of gold, from her hair to her dress, to the jewelry dripping from her neck and wrists. Sophia watched from her position near the champagne fountain as Mark worked the room, greeting former colleagues and friends with exaggerated enthusiasm. He had gained weight since their separation, and his hairline had begun its inevitable retreat, but he carried himself with unearned confidence that made Sophia feel nauseated. Olivia laughed too loudly at everything Mark said, her voice cutting through conversations like nails on expensive crystal glassware. They made their way closer to where Sophia stood, and she braced herself for the inevitable confrontation that hung in the air like gathering storm clouds. Mark spotted her, and his eyes widened briefly before narrowing into something resembling contempt mixed with satisfaction at seeing his former wife alone. He whispered something to Olivia, who turned to stare at Sophia with undisguised curiosity and barely concealed amusement dancing in her calculating eyes. They approached with deliberate slowness, as if giving Sophia time to flee, but she remained rooted to her spot, refusing to give them that satisfaction. Mark spoke, his dishes dripping with false concern that fooled absolutely no one within hearing distance of their uncomfortable reunion. He asked how she was managing, implying without subtlety that life after their marriage must be difficult for someone of her limited means and abilities. Olivia chimed in with saccharine sweetness, mentioning how brave Sophia was to attend such an elite event despite her obvious financial constraints and lack of connections. The words were designed to cut deep, to remind Sophia of every insecurity Mark had cultivated during their marriage, like poisonous plants in a garden. Other guests began gathering around, sensing drama unfolding like wolves circling wounded prey in the wilderness. Mark continued his performance, talking loudly about his recent promotion and the vacation home he had purchased for himself and Olivia in the Hamptons. He made pointed comments about how some people were meant for greatness, while others were destined to remain ordinary and forgettable in the background. Sophia felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral, refusing to give Mark the emotional reaction he so desperately craved. Part 3. The unexpected connection. A voice interrupted the tension, cutting through Mark's monologue with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel during a delicate operation. A man stepped forward from the crowd, tall, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see through all the pretense and performance surrounding them. He introduced himself as Ethan Hayes, and Sophia recognized the name immediately from business journals and entrepreneurial podcasts she had been studying. Ethan had built a technology empire from nothing, creating apps and platforms that had revolutionized how people connected and conducted business globally. He addressed Sophia directly, ignoring Mark and Olivia completely, as if they were merely furniture cluttering an otherwise elegant room. Ethan mentioned that he had heard about her recent philanthropic initiatives through mutual connections in the nonprofit sector and wanted to discuss potential collaborations. Sophia felt her heart skip as she realized someone in this room actually knew about her work and valued her for something beyond appearances. Mark's face twisted with confusion and irritation at being excluded from a conversation he had been dominating just moments before. He tried to interject, claiming that Sophia had no involvement in philanthropy and that Ethan must be confusing her with someone else entirely. Ethan turned to Mark with a smile that did not reach his eyes and politely but firmly suggested that Mark seemed misinformed about many things. Olivia tugged at Mark's sleeve, sensing that the dynamic had shifted in ways she could not fully comprehend, but instinctively recognized as dangerous. Ethan offered his arm to Sophia, suggesting they continue their conversation somewhere quieter, away from the noise and unnecessary distractions of the main ballroom. Sophia accepted, feeling a spark of electricity when her hand touched his arm, and they walked away, leaving Mark sputtering protest to anyone who would listen. They found a quieter corner near floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the Chicago skyline, glittering with lights like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Ethan spoke with genuine interest about the educational programs Sophia had been funding in underserved communities throughout the city, helping children access better opportunities. He shared his own background growing up in poverty and working multiple jobs to put himself through college before launching his first successful startup. Sophia found herself opening up about her grandmother's legacy and her commitment to using wealth as a tool for positive change rather than personal indulgence. Their conversation flowed naturally, touching on philosophy, literature, travel, and dreams for futures that extended beyond quarterly earnings reports and stock portfolios. The evening progressed with Sophia and Ethan becoming increasingly inseparable, drawing curious glances from other guests who wondered about this unexpected pairing. Mark watched from across the room, his jaw clenched tight as he consumed glass after glass of expensive scotch, fueling his growing resentment and wounded pride. Olivia tried to distract him by introducing him to influential people she claimed could advance his career. But his attention remained fixed on Sophia. He could not comprehend how his former wife, the woman he had dismissed as plain and unremarkable, was commanding attention from someone like Ethan Hayes. The sight of them laughing together with an ease and chemistry he had never shared with Sophia ignited something ugly and desperate within his chest. Mark began circulating rumors among their mutual acquaintances, suggesting that Sophia was deceiving Ethan about her background and financial situation to trap him. He painted himself as the concerned ex-husband trying to protect an innocent man from a manipulative woman who had already destroyed one marriage. Several people listened with feigned sympathy, but most saw through his transparent bitterness, recognizing jealousy masquerading as noble concern for others. Olivia grew increasingly annoyed with Mark's obsession, suggesting they leave the party and return to the hotel suite he had booked for the evening. Instead, Mark approached the small stage where the event organizer was preparing to make announcements, thanking sponsors and recognizing significant contributions to charitable causes. He grabbed the microphone with the confidence of someone who had consumed too much alcohol and too little common sense throughout the evening. Mark began speaking his words slightly slurred as he called attention to his ex-wife, Sophia Bennett, sitting with Ethan Hayes near the windows. He announced loudly that while he wished Sophia well in her endeavors, he felt obligated to warn everyone about her tendency toward deception and exaggeration. The room fell silent as hundreds of eyes turned toward Sophia, who remained remarkably calm despite the public humiliation Mark was attempting to orchestrate. Mark continued claiming that Sophia had always lived beyond her means, pretending to be something she was not, and that any claims of wealth or philanthropy were elaborate fabrications. Ethan stood immediately, his face dark with anger, but Sophia placed a gentle hand on his arm, shaking her head with a slight smile. She rose gracefully from her seat, smoothing her gown as she walked toward the stage, with the poise of someone who had been preparing for this moment. Mark handed her the microphone with a smug expression, believing he had successfully exposed her as a fraud before she could deceive anyone else. Sophia looked out at the assembled crowd, recognizing faces from Chicago's elite business circles, political spheres, and cultural institutions gathered in one space. Part 5, The Revelation and Redemption. Sophia began speaking, her voice steady and clear, carrying across the silent ballroom with unexpected authority that commanded immediate attention from every person present. She thanked Mark for providing this unexpected opportunity to address several misconceptions that had apparently been circulating about her personal circumstances and professional activities. She explained calmly that she had indeed been living a modest, quiet life during and after her marriage, focusing on personal growth rather than public recognition. Then she revealed her identity as the sole heir to Eleanor Montgomery Bennett, one of Chicago's most successful but publicity-shy real estate developers. Gasps rippled through the crowd as people began connecting the dots, remembering news articles about the Bennett estate and its mysterious beneficiary. Sophia detailed the portfolio she had inherited, including commercial properties, residential developments, and investment holdings worth approximately $3 billion across multiple states. She described the foundations she had established in her grandmother's name, funding educational programs, affordable housing initiatives, and small business development in economically disadvantaged communities. Several nonprofit leaders in attendance stood, confirming their partnerships with the Bennett Foundation and praising Sophia's genuine commitment to meaningful, systemic change. Ethan moved to stand beside her, offering silent support as she continued addressing the stunned audience with grace and measured composure. Sophia looked directly at Mark, whose face had drained of all color, as the magnitude of his mistake became painfully obvious to everyone watching. She stated clearly that she had never sought recognition or status from her wealth, understanding that true value came from positive impact rather than public validation. She thanked Ethan for seeing her worth before knowing about her financial resources, proving that genuine connections form through shared values rather than material circumstances. The crowd erupted in applause as Sophia stepped down from the stage, her transformation from dismissed housewife to empowered philanthropist, complete and undeniable. Mark stood frozen, unable to process how thoroughly he had misjudged and underestimated the woman he had so carelessly discarded and publicly humiliated. Olivia had disappeared into the crowd, already calculating her exit strategy from a relationship that had suddenly lost all its appeal and potential benefits. Event organizers rushed forward, eager to discuss potential partnerships and collaborations with the Bennett Foundation, while society reporters scrambled for exclusive interviews. Ethan took Sophia's hand, leading her toward the terrace where they could escape the sudden frenzy of attention and enjoy a quiet moment together. Under the stars, overlooking the city, Ethan told Sophia that her courage and integrity inspired him more than any amount of wealth ever could. They kissed as champagne glasses clinked behind them, and Sophia realized that losing Mark had been the unexpected gift that led her to her authentic self. The lesson emerged clearly through the evening's events, that selfishness and superficial values ultimately lead to isolation, while genuine character attracts meaningful connections and lasting happiness. Mark had chosen status over substance, prioritizing appearances and ego over authentic partnership, demonstrating how pride and arrogance create self-inflicted wounds that no amount of posturing can heal. Olivia represented the danger of building identity entirely on external validation, pursuing relationships as transactions, rather than meaningful human connections that sustain through challenges. Sophia's journey illustrated that true power comes from self-knowledge and purpose, rather than seeking approval from those who cannot recognize our inherent worth. Her patience and discretion in handling her inheritance showed wisdom in understanding that real transformation requires internal work before external revelations create lasting impact. The story revealed that revenge serves best not through cruelty, but through becoming the fullest expression of ourselves, making those who doubted us irrelevant rather than enemies.